Greetings! We're here yet again for my annual visit to Fort Rock. It's a very, very special place to me, and hopefully it's a special place to you as well if you love Oregon and you love history, and especially if you love primitive living. And let's talk about that briefly. Where we are used to be sort of an island, and what you'd be seeing out here were more islands in a huge lake 10,000 years ago. And just over here, in those little knolls, 10,000-year-old homemade DIY sagebrush cordage sandals were found, dozens of pairs. And you can actually see those if you go to various places. I saw a pair at the Crater Rock Museum in Central Point, down in the Rogue Valley. And those are the oldest shoes, basically, or the oldest footwear that humanity has discovered so far, right here in Oregon. And I really, really appreciate anybody who does DIY, bushcraft, homemade, anything that doesn't cost anything and doesn't rely on commercial products or anything like that at all. Completely off-grid. That's really the most reliable and proper survival skills, because if the survival skills of these people 10,000 years ago were completely non-viable, you and I would not be here. This video would not be happening, and I wouldn't be talking to you, and Fort Rock wouldn't even be a state park. There'd be no such thing as state parks. There'd be no such thing as humans. But because those so-called primitive skills, quote-unquote, were actually completely viable, completely sustainable, and completely effective, we are now here. It carried us through thousands and thousands and thousands of years. Now, I was actually down at the ranger station in Silver Lake, just nearby, and I was talking with an anthropologist there, and he was reminding me that human remains so far have been dated to 20,000 years ago here in Oregon. 20,000 years ago, people were here. And now you stop and think, if they brought those skills with them for 10,000 years before these sandals were left in the cave there, people knew how to make cordage, they knew how to make blades, spear points, torches, fire. And if you stop and think, this was a lake, that means they had to have mastered watercraft. So they built reed rafts or boats that they would come across the water on and use these islands as oases, and who knows what else they would have used it for. I'm sure fishing or waterfowl hunting, all sorts of stuff. And of course, Fort Rock itself, it is a blustery, breezy day, not supposed to be, is a wonderfully protected area. You have this almost huge, 180, almost huge C-shaped, escarpments where you could find some way to get out of the wind. And it's a little bit of a problem today. The breeze is coming from numerous directions, and so it's kind of handy to have various faces of rock walls. Now, the weather is not supposed to be like this. It's supposed to be sunny, no wind, and instead it's breezy, coming from all kinds of different directions, than they said, and obviously about 50% cloudy. And I've been having a long problem with that for months and months and months. Let's take a little look around here at some of these rock formations while we talk. They're just spectacular. I mean, look at some of this stuff. It's just so cool. So let's take a look. Now, the National Weather Service and weather.com and Weather This Underground and all that stuff, they have been so consistently wrong with the forecast for months and months on end that I just don't even bother looking at them anymore. I might as well not have a National Weather Service or a forecasting service of any kind. It might as well be, 8,000 BC, because I have no idea what the weather's going to be like. Those services are so unreliable and so consistently wrong that you just have no idea. Imagine this all being a huge lake. It'd be so cool. Look at these formations. Looks like almost Swiss cheese in some places. It's so cool. These layers upon layers upon layers, and some of them are hard rock and others are sort of just mud, like mudstone, because this is volcanic, so I'm guessing there were lahars. There's potholes all over the top. This is so cool. There's places where you can sort of see underneath, like here. You can see right through there. That's pretty cool. Little sort of cirques and cracks and stuff. So, I mean, in terms of just finding out what the weather's going to be like tomorrow, it might as well be 8,000 BC. And when it comes to commercial services and products, I can't seem to get consistent cell service. I can't seem to get consistent internet. And so it might as well not have internet. I can't rely on it. I can't count on it. So it might as well, as far as I'm concerned, might as well be 10,000 BC or 8,000 BC, you know. And this might as well just be a whole huge lake. And I've been having a similar problem with commercial products that I've been buying. For months and months, all of the specific and specialty commercial products I've been buying keep failing almost automatically, or don't do what they're advertised to do. They just fail. I spent too much money on a Thermarest Saros 0-degree sleeping bag, and I was wearing dual layer thermals, 2 hats in 45-degree weather, and I was still cold inside that bag. And the company just basically said, oh, you can send it in for warranty service, instead of saying, oh, well, that's not right. Maybe was it manufactured incorrectly or something? No, I don't think it is. I think it's just not that good of quality. And that's just one of many, many products. I had a backpacking tent that the poles shattered after 8 days of use under their own strain. Just sitting there set up for 8 days without anybody using it, other than it was actually my supply tent. Look at these potholes. And just sitting there under its own weight, under its own strain. The tent poles broke, and it's like, that's the second time in as many weeks that exact tent, I had to replace it. The poles before that broke under their own strain. I had a little battery-powered USB rechargeable vaporizer thing, and it broke within 3 months of using and never worked correctly, and numerous features broke. The button broke off, the tip broke off, the coils stopped working. It just failed. $75 down the hole. And it's might as well just not even bother with commercial products. And the same thing with footwear. And that's why I come out here every year, is the footwear. Oh, these views are stunning. There's a little bitty community of Fort Rock looking southeast. Really pretty up here. I come out here to commune with these ancient people, these not so primitive people who left their footwear there, their homemade DIY footwear. And personally, I haven't paid money for footwear in about 10, 11 years. And the newest shoes that I have, or footwear that I have, are these. These are my homemade sandals. I made these out of the rear tire off of a riding lawnmower, and some strapping that you would use to like cinch a sleeping bag down or something. But they're super simple to make. Literally just traced around my foot, cut it apart into the shape with a pair of metal shears. Made the holes with whatever it would work. I think I used a drill for that, but you could melt it out with a hot piece of metal if you wanted to, and then just ran the straps. And the heel strap is the only really tricky part, to get that just the right size for your foot. But they've been lasting and lasting and lasting, but they're starting to get a little worn out. Nothing does last forever, but they've certainly lasted longer than some, $65 or $85 pairs of hiking boots that failed within, 6 months of buying them. And I'm sure you've had the same thing, where you're out on this hike relying on your shoes, and suddenly they just come apart. And you're like, that is just horrible. I paid, how much money for these? Didn't even get a season out of them. I've gotten numerous seasons out of these. I've actually done trail runs in these. The only thing that's wrong right now is that this is starting to crack, but it's still holding together, mainly because they are belted tires. And you can actually see, I get all these grass seeds out of there. The edge here is nylon thread. That's one of the things I would say, if you're going to make a pair of these, don't use car tires that have steel belted tires, because the steel belts will be really hard to cut through when you go to cut around here. You'll need metal shears for sure. Even these needed them, but these are nylon threads. And so there's no worry about little bits of metal sticking out, and that's what you'll get if you use a steel belted radial tire. You're going to have little bits of metal sticking out, from where the steel belts are. You may have seen those, and if your tire got really, really bald, you'll see those bits of metal sticking out, and you're like, yeah, that's something you don't want on, because what'll happen, you may notice here a little boo-boo. That's from my one foot accidentally scraping across there. And if you had little metal bits sticking out, you would be slashing yourself to ribbons. And I only occasionally clip myself there, just not paying attention, or my toe might drop. And I always encourage everybody to try and connect with the ancient people, try and connect with those, Stone Age and primitive, quote unquote, primitive peoples, and learn their skills. Even if you never really end up needing them, there's that certain confidence knowing that no matter what happens, you'll always be able to survive. You'll always be able to shoe and clothe yourself. You'll always be able to make shelter. You'll know how to get food, water, make fire with nothing at all other than what you just found in the landscape. And so it's very, very important to connect with the ancient peoples and keep that 10,000 years gap not so gapish. We need to make it come full circle. Unlike Fort Rock here, which isn't a full circle, it kind of stops right here. We need to come full circle with those survival skills and with those living skills, and make sure that we never forget them, because one of these days we're going to need them. So it's very, very important to keep in touch with history, know your prehistory, and know how people survived, how the people that came before us lived. Because if their survival skills didn't work, we wouldn't be here now. This video would not be recorded. I wouldn't have a a thermarest backpack, or sorry, sleeping bag to complain about, or a National Weather Service forecast to complain about at all. I'd be basically without any of that stuff. And as I seem to be getting slowly nudged into that sort of lifestyle just by the failure of all of my commercial products, I'm more and more finding deep and incredibly meaningful value and connection with those so-called primitive or ancient living skills. But you should do the same thing, and do yourself a favor and come out to Fort Rock and walk across the same ground that the ancient people walked across, the people whose living skills and survival skills made it possible for you and I to be here today. So definitely want to thank you so much for joining me here during these few minutes of connecting with the ancient people and communing with those historical, amazing survivors here at Fort Rock. And of course, we're enjoying some, although it's not perfectly sunny, it's a very interesting sky. The clouds certainly break it up and give it some interest. So thanks for joining me to enjoy these sunny skies with some clouds, meaningful and deep connections with our ancient history. And as you saw earlier, as always, ants.